Welcome everybody. Assalamualaikum and very good evening, everyone. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Our webinar tonight is titled "The Eye in BIM. Catch Me If You Can." We are going to talk about the eye or the information in building information modeling. And as some of us may know, BIM is as a whole, refer to the process of the all party involved in the construction and lifecycle management of built assets, working collaboratively and sharing data. However, the true power of BIM lies in the eye or the information. All the information gathered from the conceptual stage to completion stage, and not just stored, but it's also actionable. The eye or the information can be used to improve accuracy, express design goal from the office to the field, improve knowledge transfer from stakeholder to another stakeholder, reducing change order and field coordination problems, and provide insight into existing building for a renovation project later on. Therefore, through this series of webinar, we would like to raise more awareness on the importance of the eye in BIM. Throughout this 4 series webinar, will be first is to emphasize the importance of the eye in the BIM project during the pre-development and post-development. Second is to raise the awareness of the eye in BIM to be utilized by various project stakeholders in many environments. And lastly is to discuss how BIM can lead to efficient and working environment with no double handling and reducing unnecessary efforts to meet the objective of project delivery. Okay, with us tonight, we have Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Tamizi Harun, who is the Dean of Commercialization, Department of Research and Innovation in University Malaysia Pahang. So welcome, Doctor.
Hi everyone.
And we have Mr. Ronan Collin, who is the Head of Project Information Construction in Gamuda. So welcome, Ronan.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody.
And last but not least, we have Dr. Wan Fadil, who is the Director Manager of Emos Services Nemberhad. And
good evening. Yeah.
Hi, Doctor.
Hi.
Okay, last but not least, me, Ahmad Sha'rainon Md Shaarani, Managing Director of Microcorp Nemberhad. I will be your host tonight. We are currently doing the integrated workplace management system in Malaysia, and we deliver BIM for FM, as well as automating various processes of FM activities throughout the utilizing facility management information system. Before we start, we have a few housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute, and if you have any question for a speaker, please feel free to enter them into the chat session, and we will be addressing the question at the end of the session. Or you can also ask by raising your hand at the participant section of your Zoom interface. And we also recording this, and is a recorded version of today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session, and also it's been live in Facebook, in our Microcorp Facebooks. And each of the speaker will be given 15 minutes to give their insight, and after that we have after all the speaker sharing, we have a 30 minutes for a Q&A. So without any further ado, Dr. Tamizi will become the first speaker tonight and continue with the Mr. Ronan Collin. And lastly, last but not least, Dr. Cik Wan Fadil.
Okay.
Okay. So, Dr. Tamizi.
Okay.
And over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Sha'rainon. So, can you guys see my slide there?
Yeah. Can you put on the projection? Oh yeah, good.
Okay. So, quite a nice topic actually. Catch Me If You Can. So I just picked the Catch Me If You Can movie scene there, and then put there. So because the information in a project can be a crook or can be a bless, depending upon how well we manage them. So before we start, I need to explain a bit about our BIM formation at UMP. So basically, since the early beginning of establishment BIM at UMP Holdings, we don't set up it under the university, but rather under the spin-off company of UMP, which is UMP Holdings, because the nature of the job that we keep receiving is more towards industrial-based rather than academic research-based. So ever since 2014, we're focusing on the training education, organizational transformation, project and consultancy, and research and development. So the initial idea of setting up the BIM at UMP Holdings, because UMP Holdings itself is the asset owner for UMP. So the Gambang campus is owned by UMP Holdings, whereas for the UMP campus in Pekan, we have two campuses. In Pekan is owned by UMP, but UMP Holdings is the facility manager for that particular project. So the initial idea is that to structure all the data in a BIM format so that we can manage the asset properly. That was the idea last time in 2014, 2015. But ended up along the way when we set up the team, a lot of job coming in. So since so we just take the opportunity and do the business for BIM. That's the story behind this. So the one that I would like to share tonight goes back to our first intention of why we're doing BIM all this while. And then looking at capturing, I really like the topic of the seminar, capturing the information there. Catch Me If You Can, because theoretically it seems like it's easy to catch the information if we get involved as early as possible. During the construction stage, moving to during the design stage, carry forward to the construction stage, and later on during the handover and facility management stage. But when we try to capture information, either already completed buildings or during the construction stage, we have different set of difficulties. And this is the thing that we would like to share based on our experience.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
We're waiting for
that. Before we go further, I think because I'm not really sure the demographic of the participant tonight, but I just want to recap again the definition of BIM used in Malaysia. Basically, is a much more easy definition. Basically, we want to ensure the entire supply chain of project delivery using model-based methodology, where BIM become, I would rather say, a Tupperware where you store the information, a container of information, and then if you store the correct information, then you can retrieve back the correct information. But if you don't store the information inside the Tupperware, then you can't retrieve anything from there. Okay. So, okay, next. Okay, so BIM in operation maintenance, because currently we are looking at two major standards. Engage. Yeah. So either we want to use PAS 1192 by the UK standard, or we want to use the GKR standard, or the latest one, ISO 19650 standard. But I haven't used yet the 19650, so I can't really talk about that one much. But rather to talk about the MySPATA requirement, because since we are managing the government assets, so most of our methodology based on public work department methodology. So BIM standard used for FM in Malaysia currently looking at two different methodology, either PAS 1192, Part 3, or MySPATA requirement. So because this is only 15 minutes duration, so I will only focus on the BIM used in the operation and maintenance. So far, we're still at the evaluating stage in which platform that we would want to use. We're aware that how powerful Akibas is, Then we met so many times, and then we have reviewed the things. And then still, on our point of view, it's much more better if we manage to digitalize all the data first before we start to invest on procuring the platform to manage our assets. So in our operational maintenance, of course, FM itself is very big aspect. Some might say OEM, some might say FM. But the one that I would like to focus tonight is just for the documentation and record keeping. So because integrated digital assets. So just focusing on that one. And then looking at this methodology. Okay. So this is a form that we receive, normally the process flow, when we receive the work order. Let's say somebody complain to our system, then let's say we request from the UMP, and then we key in the system and generate work order, inform the engineer emergency if the emergency case, and then the technician shall respond with agreed stipulated response time. So the challenges of managing the university asset is we are dealing with quite a lot of what we call these things. I can't recall the words.
The bureaucracy or what?
No, bureaucracy. I mean, because we had so many students, so many users. So what we call this thing, somebody tried to break down something for they enjoy breaking down something. I forgot the term already.
Vandalism. Oh, vandalism.
Oh, vandalism, yes. Okay, so we're dealing with quite a lot of vandalism as well. So when the thing got vandalized, this is not within our contract. Yeah. So the client cannot simply deny our request to claim because certain thing is beyond things that beyond our scope. So because of that, we need to properly record all the data information, and paper-based documentation is no way we can do that. So going back to this process flow. So when we receive the work order from the logger, so we will check first, is it the complaint, the things that they complain is under warranty or no? If it is under warranty, then it's much more easier for us. Simply call the vendor, then the vendor will repair it for us. But if it is not under warranty, then we have to go and repair those things by ourselves. So under the UMP holding, we have another spin-off known as UMP services. This one is focusing on the operation and maintenance. So in order to allow us to do the corrective measure and everything and so forth, the thing that we need to know where the specs, where are the requirements, where are the data. If not, it's really, really hard to trace back those things. So prior to the BIM implementation, everything is scattered around. We have product catalog, we have warranty document, and then we have other things, documentation scattered around. So that's the purpose of why we want to have one BIM model, so we can store all information inside the model. That's basically the idea. So before the technician going directly to the site, what they can do is to check the model first to understand what the component that they are dealing with. So for instance, let me share one video.
It's a huge effort, Doctor.
Later we talk about how difficult it is to convert back all the data. Okay, this is one of the laser scan that we have already produced. So let's say we receive a complaint that stated that there's a leakage around this area. So rather than going straight away, going to investigate the condition at the site, so we can investigate over the model first. So by looking at the model, basically there are 3 layers inside the model. The first layer is the photometry. Second, real image. Second layer is photometry, and then the third layer is a Revit. Because the photometry really good at measurement only, because it's still surface modeling. Embedded information cannot be restored within the scan image. So we need we still need to have Revit model. So all the data information stored, populated under inside the Revit model. So from here, so first layer is photogrammetry, and then second layer we have a point cloud. And then in order to get in further detail what sort of requirement here, then we need to open up our Revit model. So that's basically the way that we're doing it.
Yeah, the whole idea is actually utilizing the model.
Okay. Then another one, okay. Can you still see the video?
Yeah. Now we are seeing your Revit file.
Okay. So from the model that once we already identify the location of the problems, so the next stage, this is the model that we have here there. So then we can go directly looking at the room that we have identified. So under the room there, so we can go directly click on the windows there. And then you can see, so because we are using Mascata requirement, so this is the template of Mascata provided by the Public Works Department or GKR.
Yeah.
So all of the information be populated according to the Mascata requirement. So later when we want to extract the schedule, it become much more easier.
Oh, jadi itu lah.
Hello?
Okay, it's okay, no problem.
Okay, and then certain information that we cannot embed within the Revit model, so like a catalog or spec, because if we put the catalog or spec inside the model, the model going to be very huge in terms of the capacity, in terms of size, file size. So we also embed link. So most of the catalog, we put it on the drive. You by simply click on the drive, then it will direct to the original catalog of the component. So you can see from there. So there's a way that we use in order to capture and manage back the information. But the one that we shown here, still looking at the manual approach of managing the asset and information by using BIM. So currently we are at the stage of converting all the file into the Revit format. Once we achieve around, we don't target all. It's going to be very crazy to target all.
Go for quick win or there?
Yeah?
Quick win.
Yes. So we targeted around 20% of the asset being digitalized. Then we're going to decide which platform that we're going to acquire in order to manage all this data later on.
Yeah, I think it's a good initiative to convert the BIM or the information, the physical information to digital nowadays.
Yes. Then I can saw Haris Mansoor as well as a participant there. Yeah. So we collaborate with Haris Mansoor using their product in order to do the laser scan for our projects.
Well, he are moving towards laser scanning nowadays, Haris?
Yes. Okay. So that's basically the idea. So this this one is just we want to test by using drone and everything, but really this one for the marketing modeling only, not as good as what we can do in order to manage the data. Okay, the challenges for BIM for FM implementation that we can see is first the technology and process related challenges where we don't have a clear role and responsibility for loading data into the models or database and then maintaining the model itself. So especially when you come forward during the construction, hand over to the FM facility manager contractor. And then diversity in BIM and FM software tools and interoperability issues. Certain FM software just only require in the format of Excel only. Even we're talking about COBI format is basically Excel format. Certain,
we call it excellent system.
Excellent system, okay. Excellent system, yes. And then lack of effective collaboration between project soldier for modeling and modularization, and necessity yet difficulty in software vendor involvement, because most of the FM software require a lot of customization, to be honest. And we can't do ourselves. then the moment we have to rely on the survey vendor to customize our workflow, there's a huge challenge there. Whereas for the organizational challenges, we still have cultural barriers towards adopting new technology, organization-wide resistance, need for investment in infrastructure, training and new software tools, undefined fees structure, and so on and so forth. So basically, when we try to push forward this methodology, we can't expect all the people in FM can read the BIM model from Revit. No, we can't. So what we do is that we assign dedicated person to look after the digital asset. We name it as a physical asset, and then the one is a digital asset. So there's a team looking after the digital asset team.
Yeah, it's required, you know, because
okay.
it's a different.
And then the true problem that we're facing right now is a fabricated SBIT drawings that contributes to the inaccurate data information. Yes, we have SBIT drawings, but we really doubted the accuracy of SBIT drawing. In fact, when we compare certain SBIT drawing, there's nothing much difference as compared to the construction drawings.
Standard.
Okay, so because of this issue, then we try to embed this methodology. What if we get involved early during the construction stage in order to capture the construction information, convert it, update it to become construction model, and later on update it again along the way to become SBIT model. Ideally, people will say this is the best methodology. Yes, we agree this is the best methodology, but it doesn't seem as easy as it sounds. Okay. So one of our project in Terengganu, MBKT, information capture, just throw a bit what we did there. Okay, one of the scope within the project is we need to develop the SBIT BIM models. There are many scope. This is just something that I can summarize there. So to develop the SBIT BIM models, so this is part of the strategy that we use in order to embed within the project. There are two different things. If the asset already completed, the coordination doesn't happen much complicated because we're only dealing with whoever owned the data information. But when it comes to the project delivery, we're dealing with the live data, live project, and live involvement of many people. So we need to have BEP, we need to have collaboration plan. Also, the most critical part is Revit best practice. It doesn't matter which methodology that you want to engage. It doesn't matter which template that you want to engage, but it must be consistent along the way. You cannot simply update one methodology at the design stage, different methodology in construction stage, and later on different methodology on the FM stage. So the data won't be nicely managed if you that way. So we can have so many methodology, but the moment we get involved in the project, we have to agree to one methodology only, so that it can make everybody's life easier and much more happy to get involved in the project. Okay, so this is a general approach that we want to implement BIM. So I'll just keep this one because I already have 15 minutes there. So this is the process flow that we use in order to deliver the BIM methodology. Because if you look at here, we have input there, we have process, then we have output. We really need to track where the input coming from and the accuracy of the input itself, so that the process can be delivered accordingly, and then later on the output that we want to produce can fit back to the client's needs and requirement. And then this one's more towards the requirement that need to be part of the compliance of the submission to the client. So by having this methodology, it makes our life easier to coordinate with our project team. But there's a big but there. We thought it's gonna be easy, but if people don't refer to this process model, it will be as good as nothing as well. This is another challenge that we're facing. So some people keep on coming and going. When they replace the new people don't even know how to read this process model. Then now and then we need to train the entire project team how to read the process model, in what stage we are, your role and responsibility, even though every single thing is stipulated within the BEP. That's a different issue. Okay. So this is the more clear view of the process model, step by step. Because by having this thing on the there, everybody knows their roles and responsibilities, and then which part that they need to produce as an input, and then which part of the deliverable that they need to extract out of the model. So these are laser scan that we use in order to capture the image. Remember, laser scan is simply capture the geometrical data. The information, the specification need to be updated manually again. You need to extract from the specification, enter, punch it into the Revit model, and that's it, the process. So this is some of it. Then people said, oh, if you capture early during the design construction stage, so you can capture all the mechanical systems, isn't it? That's what people say. So what we encounter, yeah, this one. How are you going to put the laser scan there? So the moment the scaffold,
I thought you want to scan the scaffolding.
no, it won't be looking nice in the digital model. Then the moment they dismantle the scaffold, the shielding already been closed.
Yeah.
Then it's too late already. Again, we're repeating the same problem as well. So this made me think, seems like almost similar if you're going to capture the data during the construction and also after the construction. Because towards the end, you still need to open up the shielding by using a smaller version of the scanner and put above the shielding.
It's another cost, you know?
Yes.
Open the shielding, you know?
Yes. Then one few challenges that we are facing during the construction stage, there is post-processing data quality. Sometimes when we capture all the scan data, we bring it back to our office. Certain points are missing, where we need to go back to the site and capture the point. And then post-processing equipment and software, and then time duration, data accuracy, and data relation for SB model as well. Then that's all for my part.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Tamizi. Yeah, it's great. It's a good effort to start
Yes.
to digitalize your information first. You know,
Mm.
it's like our journey those days. We start our activity BIM for FM when we given a project to build up, to redraw it back in BIM and transfer back to FM. So we feel you. We know how difficult
Yes.
they are. So we have done it in 2010 for one of the government building. So it's
Okay.
really difficult, you know. And during those days, the laser scanning is not yet matured, you know. So
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Dr. Tamizi, for sharing. Good experience, good challenges that we shared, you know. Okay, I think now you like to have a view from Mr. Ronan. I like to hear about. I always call it linear asset management. You know? When
The train lines.
Yeah. So over to you, Mr. Ronan.
Thank you very much. So good evening, everybody. It's my honor to be here this evening. So I'm going to kick off controversially. Tarmizi, I know what you're doing, and I have one thing that I would disagree with entirely. I don't believe that the facility management information should be in Revit at all. I believe that the information should be kept separate, and I believe there should be a key in the model to the data. So whether it's an equipment ID, whether it's a unique identifier, but the idea of a Revit team updating models with asset information is counterproductive because it requires a very expensive resource in competent Revit staff that doesn't exist, and it means retraining an entire industry. So our approach is very different. We build the data away from the models and we link the two together. So I'll show you that in the presentation.
Okay, sure.
So there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. Don't take it the wrong way, but we have a different way of doing it. So yes, we're going to take the I in BIM, catch me if you can. And basically, just before I kick off, I'm not going to go into a whole presentation about Gamuda and our projects. You can find all that information online. Most of the people on this call will know who Gamuda are. So if you would like to know more information about me and what I'm doing, please follow me on LinkedIn. And it's the best way to keep up on what's happening. So I have a key message this evening, and it's this: the owner is buying the information. So if we're talking about facility information, asset information, or as Charmaine says, linear information, it's the responsibility of the owner to define what they want. The owner has to think of the information as a valuable asset that they have to buy, that they have to maintain. And if they don't see it as a valuable asset, they're never going to get what they want, and they're certainly not going to get what they need. So there's a huge responsibility in the client to specify what they want. In the MRT's case, for the current project, the Line 2 project, the SSP line, the MRT had a very clear mandate of what information they want. So let me show you one example of what a BIM model looks like for anybody who has not seen one. This is a Revit model. It's actually shown in a piece of software called Navisworks. And here you can see the architectural systems. So you can see the ceilings, you can see the interior walls, you can see some of the balustrades. These are all the typical architectural details you will find in a BIM system. This is a structural model. So this is the diaphragm walls, the steel, structural steelwork. So all of this does not tend to end up in an FM system. It tends to end up in these kind of visual tools. What is in FM and is critical to facility management, particularly for these systems, is these live systems. So you've got air pressure pumps, you've got water pumps, you've got sensors, you've got fixtures like fire hose reels, and then you've got all the train operating systems. So you've got speaker systems, you've got security systems, you've got rail sensors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the data that's required for the asset management tends to come from these very complicated models. And this is what we call a federated model. So this is where we've taken all these different models and put them together. Now, what you're looking at are models that were created by design consultants. And typically, design consultants don't get involved in maintaining facilities. In fact, I've never met an architect, or I've met very few architects who actually go back into a building 5-10 years after they designed it to see how it's performing. So typically, the information that the architect puts in these models is useful for construction, but it's not necessarily useful for asset management. So one of the challenges that we had on the KVMRT project was, how do we use these models to meet the MRT requirement for asset management? So here you can see a very simple graph of what we have to do. And across the top are the stages of the project. So these are classic kind of railway metro project stages. You've got prelim and pre-final design. You've got final design, which is classic detail design, construction documentation. Final CSDs are when the operator systems are coordinated with the actual railway structure systems. And then you've got the as-built condition. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there is an absolute necessity for asset data capture. So from the very beginning of the design, in terms of detail design, we were focused on how do we capture data that we can use for asset management. So if you take these models, the key message here is that the top left model is from the structures. It's typically a structural model. Then you've got the systems models, and you can see some of the sections through them. So how do we take these design models, because that's what they are, they're not construction models, design models, and use them for asset management? So the first thing you have to put in place is you have to have a very robust data management or project information management system. So we call this the single source of truth, or another term for this is a common data environment, or CDE. So on the MRT project, we're using a system called ProjectWise. You could also use a system, for example, Viewpoint for Projects or Aconex. But these systems require a couple of things. They need to be able to track the logins of the people that are using it. They need to be able to link asset information to different attributes. So there could be documents, there could be models, but they have to build a link between the asset information and the design information. So this is why I say we don't want to have all the data in the models, but we want to have a way of linking the assets together. And you can see here a list of all the information that we would typically store on this common data environment. So we've got the models, we've got the design visualizations, and if you look all the way down the bottom, we have to collect all the asset information for facility management. So the system has been designed as a design and construction tool, but it's also been designed to collect the asset information for facility management. So we have a client who specified what they want. We have models that are being built by the consultants, and we have a data management system that allows us to build a system. The next key critical item is that you have to have an asset management strategy, and you need to have a classification system. So it's not good enough to say we want the consultants to build the assets. We actually have to have a way of classifying them. Now, a different way of looking at this is if you think of a library and you want to go and find a book in the library and you're looking for the index will be the genre of the book, then it'll be a bit more specific, and then eventually get down to maybe an author or a number. So it's a numbering system. And the building classification system is exactly that. So the KVMRT are using a system called Uniclass. It's slightly modified for the MRT, but essentially it's based on this principle. Every station is considered as an entity. And then inside that station, you have to manage the spaces. So facility management is based around spaces. If somebody calls up and says there's a problem with a particular facility, the first thing they'll tell you is what room they're in or what space they're in. So it's based around spaces. Then it's based around systems. So then you structure the data around whether it's a fire sprinkler system, a drainage pump system, an air supply system, a smoke extract system. So you base it around systems. And then you get down to the individual items that require maintenance and management. So they would be what we call products. So that could be a fan, a light, a switch, a particular asset that needs to be repaired. So essentially every asset in the building needs to have these 4 pieces of information. It needs to know, oh, hang on, what's going on here?
Morning.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty. Hang on a second. I've got too many screens open. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yeah, can you share your screen, or because otherwise they need to pin you?
Well, they better pin me because I don't have a way of sharing my screen because I'm doing it this way with the software.
Okay, it's okay.
So it's better if the people on the admin side can just pin the view. It's easier. You can do that with Zoom.
Yeah, I pin it. You know.
Yeah. I think if someone jumps in, it gets a bit messy. Apologies if people have missed it. So how do we do this? So let me show you a couple of examples. So here's an example where this is the actual entity. So in this case, it's a railway station box. So it's given a code. Now, these codes are not necessarily human readable. They're intended to be machine readable to make it easier to index and find information. So there is always a text definition, but the codes are basically alphanumeric. Then once you get into the space, there is already an existing facility management system in place in the MRT in terms of how they name spaces. So we've adopted that for naming all the spaces in the stations. Now, for those of you who are Revit aficionados, we're using basically rooms in Revit in terms of Revit architecture, or mechanical spaces in terms of Revit MUP. But essentially, we're defining a space by an enclosed area. And then we're determining what elements are in those spaces. So then the systems go through all the spaces. So a particular system is an entire network. So it's not limited to a space, but it's an entire network. So in this case, it's a drainage system. And then when you look for a component in a space or a product in a space, you get right down to the definition of what all these different objects are. In this case, it's a cooling tower. So this classification system is the backbone to everything else that we have to do in terms of collecting data. So once we've identified and set up the classification system, this is put in by the consultants. So as the consultants place systems or place objects in the systems, they have to classify all these products. Now, in our case, we had started modeling the project before the system, or this unit class system, was finalized. So we had to go back and add in a lot of this classification information with the design consultants into the models. But the designers are responsible for putting the classification in to the models. And then the construction team are responsible for collecting the asset information that's required to actually run the facility. So these are all the asset information that's required. So we have to capture the classification system, the asset tag, which is a unique identifier, and then all this additional information. So, and we look for things like when it was installed, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to collect it for all these systems. Now, this is a massive amount of information. It's very dynamic. It changes all the time, or it gets updated all the time. So we had to come up with a system for doing this in a sensible way. So we're currently doing a digital transformation of our business across all of our business sites. And one of the tools that we're using is a system called FieldView, which is a digital data collection platform. It allows us to create digital forms instead of paper forms. So we can have forms for purchasing permits. We can have forms for quality checking in the factory. We can have forms for delivery of systems to site. We can have forms for first fix, second fix, quality assurance, progress reporting. So we're digitizing the entire normal construction process of tracking the purchase, the supply, the delivery, and the installation of all the assets. And by doing this, it allows us to capture all the asset data and link all that data back to the particular assets in question. So we've digitized the system to collect the data. And that's why we keep the data separate from the models. This data is going into a relational database, and the link between the models and the database is through the asset identification tag. So it's very, very important that the concept is understood, because there's so much data coming in, you don't want to be pumping that back into a tool like Revit.
Yeah.
So in our case, we're doing all of these inspections, all of these site assessments, for field view, and now we're using it for work inspections, for installation inspections, and for progress monitoring. So one of the challenges is, if you're going to collect all this data, how do you know you have all the data? How do you know what data is yet to be captured? And how do you know what data you've actually got? So what we're doing is we're setting up a construction schedule, which includes all the phases required for the actual MEP systems. So whether that's the purchasing phase, the delivery phase, the testing phase, the commissioning phase, etc. And let me show you an example of what this looks like. So this is what we call a 4D sequence, or a time-based sequence. Okay. So in the bottom left corner, you can see the details. So you can see all the different systems coming in. And then each of the screens are different views at the same level of one station. And you will start to see the E&M systems popping up. Now, what's happening is we've scheduled out every activity for every piece of equipment that has to be installed into the actual system. And then we've taken all of that information from the schedule and from the planning, and we've used that to set up all the check forms and the digital forms on the field view system. So effectively what we've created is a checklist for every single piece of equipment that has to be installed, for every single test that has to be completed, and for every single handover that has to be done for every piece of equipment in the station. So we're using basically the model as the basis for doing the planning. And then when you're doing, the M&E team are using their checklists, their procedures, their workflows to map out all the tests. And then we're using field view to capture all that in real time on the sites. So this is how we're managing the capturing of the information during the construction phase, and that all that information will then be passed to the MRT for operations. So what that means in terms of a very simple workflow, we have guys on site using iPads and Samsung devices to capture the data, which is going through this Viewpoint platform. We're then using a database system to pull that information into our reporting system, which then we pass on to the MRT system or MRT staff. So we're using digital systems on site to collect the FM data. So I think that's about just short of 15 minutes. So again, the key message here, though, is that we're doing all this because the owner has specified the information that they want. The owner needs to define what they want. So they've done that in the recommendations. And then our team in Gamuda have worked very hard over the last couple of years to work out how to do the system efficiently and effectively. And I'll just leave you one thought. The MRT Line 2 operations does not start for another 18 to 24 months. So we're still collecting the data. So you're going to have to come back in 24 months' time, and I'll tell you whether we've actually managed to give all the data to the owner or not. But we're currently collecting all the data on site using these processes. So I hope you found this useful, and happy to take any questions at the end. Thank you very much.
I like the idea. The owner is buying the information. You know? The owner needs to define what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good terminology, you know, because when you want to buy something, you need to know what to buy. But when we have money, we know that we can pay, but sometimes we doesn't know what to buy.
Well, this is the problem. So why would you go out and sometimes they think they're buying a Ferrari and they end up getting a Proton Saga. So this is the problem. They have an interpretation of what they're going to get, and then there's a reality of what they end up with.
Yeah, nice sharing. Yeah, interesting, because I like to, I love to involve in this linear asset management and try a couple of times. Like tomorrow there is one tender closing for the, I think, Prolintas Highway.
Okay.
So they want to do that also, but they want to start like digitizing from the GIS perspective, in the same time building up their BIM model for their toll plazas,
Yeah.
Also build up all the 6 highway together. So,
oh wow, okay. Well, that'll be interesting. But when you speak to them, tell them just to put the models together, but don't put the data in the models, but keep the data separately in databases.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you, Ronan. Now I think we have our Dr. Wan Fadil, to share his view. What is the I in BIM? How can we cache the I? Dr. Fadil, please, over to you, Doctor. Yeah, Doctor. Okay now? Unmute your mic, Doctor. Unmute your mic. All right.
You okay?
Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sorry, I think I'm still pinned. You're going to have to take me off the pin, otherwise nobody's going to see him.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Let me just start my stopwatch just in case. Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. Okay. Quite challenging, you know. When you say you want to test the eye. Right? So basically, I do have a nice model, like both speakers. Okay. So what I like more like focusing more on the information management is just to share some of the experience that I have before, right? Uh, Before we go details, I think both speakers I mentioned about these two, but as I said, I don't have a nice model to show, but just to uh, round up in it, okay. And I think we've seen some nice BIM model here, and so of course not all BIM model can fit for the project, so we need to have another data or information. And I think for Microcorp, the monitor on the facility management here. Currently, I've been working on the data visualizations now, and I think maybe Mr. Ronnie, you're working on some data analytics. I think so, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Okay. So the issue is what we are showing three here, data analytics and visualizations, also the FM is almost an end part. The problem is that we found out is that at the beginning of the project, early projects, you know, if you will not manage properly the information at the beginning, I think at the end, we found out that a lot of information is missing. This is what happened in many projects that even some people that I met, they mentioned the same thing, I think, right? So of course, you are not going to go back to the early stage where you have to do back again. And most of them, even like when I talk some, even like JKR or PWD, they're not willing to key in some of the data that we have. They have some finished project where we check the data, especially when used for FM, and the data is not enough. This is because they did not put the information early stage. So if I like to share some this angle because currently I'm working on this knowledge management part, which is actually the hierarchy from the data information. Right. Of course, I'm not going to talk more on the knowledge management here, but since, as I mentioned earlier, I want to focus more on the information management. Is how we collect, we process it, or how we store. I think previous speakers I mentioned about few important things, like the you mentioned about process model. I think Ronald, you mentioned about client I like to share also when because the experience is more on the when I working in the company in Abu Dhabi, because we put a client leadership is a myth, and so when we develop the uh, on the so-called the model that I'm going to share later. I like to show this one because this is a project faces, and then everyone know about this one. And from the projects, we have EIR, the BEP, we developed the B model, and the project database. At the end, then we come to the application where they want to use it for FM, asset or maybe for another applications. Right? As I said, my focus is on information management. So I'm more focused on this, actually on these two parts, the beginning of the project. I did not say that what I said, many people ignore what it is. But as I said, the EIR, when we mentioned about the client give a brief, everything, we have to make sure that the projects or the information that they want. I think Ronald mentioned about the client's responsibility. It's very important. Yes. This is what we have facing when we put the client leadership, we put the client first. I mean, we always consult the client so that they know what they want. Is it that they want? So before we proceed to the technology part or website or the model part, and because we want to make sure that at the end of the day that the data that they want or what information they want is available, right? Okay, and as I said, I want to share some experience when I was working in a company in Abu Dhabi as a manager before. We used a 3D approach, right, for the process modeling. I think the process modeling is many methodologies. I think the Tamizi show them. Okay. Yeah, for us, one of them we use is actually used in mechanical engineering, called such design techniques. Right? So we capture that, we use the activities, and because we want to know what input, outputs, who control the activities, mechanism used, or for example, mechanism can be a tools or software, or maybe some policies or whatever. Depend on the how we manage the activities. And the beauty of this techniques is, we can decompose it to many levels as we can. Of course, the question is how many levels is very subjective. Actually, it depends. If you up to the detail level already that you suit your objective, then we stop. Maybe 2 level, 3 level, and that. So in case uh, when we have a problem in certain activities, we can zoom direct to the detailed activities, and we can check what input, what control, did they produce the output that we want, what mechanism use it. So if anything missing here, we can check it straight away. So you see, we're more working on the paper base basically. It's not really the technology, right? So we have a big A3, even sometimes we have to be bigger than 80 size paper to this model, right?
Okay.
And another one, sorry. Another way we develop protocol is called a process protocol. Okay. This one we develop purposely for our clients. This is for the beam. The faces. Sorry, is very big. I zoom focus on certain face only, right? This model is actually follow the model developed in University of Suffolk in 1998. But that one is for the conventional method. This one is we develop for the IPD, Integrated Project Delivery, right? So I separate into two because there are 2 levels here. On the left side here, is really is developed for the clients. Okay, each client have their own departments or sections, and the other stakeholder, you will see the big consultant, the design consultant, contractors. It's almost like similar. I think what Dr. Tambizi show, but because it's too small, I cannot zoom up. But the idea may be almost similar because this one we developed or we starting quite a long time ago already, right? And if you see on this high level, right, for example, on this phase 4, for example, and at least you know, being office in the client, what process they should use or what process they should, uh, you know, uh, develop or what process they should use, perform or something like that. Depend and also on the QS or QA, sections. And if you look at other stakeholders also, for example, at this same stage, on this side, right? Then you will see that what being consultant have to do, what subcontractors to do. Okay, on this idea, basically is, like I think that the time is mentioned that it's good that because we try our best because on IPD, you bring most of stakeholders at the beginning. Of course, it's very difficult because it's not been tender yet. So on the FM side, we managed to bring them early. So on this part, we can accommodate the requirement at the FM requirement at this stage, right? Because because the FM department is belong to the clients, and so they send the representative. So when we design the process, we already accommodate the requirements inside that, right? And on the detail level, I just pick one example. This one we developed this one for the BIM energy analysis because in Abu Dhabi, the problem is the climate, so there's hot weather. And they have the so-called SDDAMA, the energy rating. They have per one per, 2 per. They have the requirements, for example, 1 per 12% should be the material used to comply with they are quite very strict, So that's why the being energy part is the energy analysis part is also important for us. So we detail out here, for example, and this is also the one methodology we use, like they call BPMN, business process modeling notations, right? And where if you see the top part is the process is where what the client have to perform, what process they have to do. And the middle part, you see, this is the data requirements, exchange requirement. The green part is the green data, and the purple, if you see maybe pink or purple here, right? This one is a non-BIM data, because, for example, like weather data, from BIM, okay? And in, for example, in Middle East, you can download the the certain months the is available. And at this day, that time, this software we use a software called EcoStat, something like that. And we use a Zoom building file, we export it, and we used to check, uh, the analysis, within the certain period of time, right? And this is a process on the BIM side. We call BIT. BIT is a BIM integrated team. So it means that it involves not only us, as a BIM consultant, it also involves contractors and also the other consultants, suppliers also in this part. So we, at least for this process, we check that whether data is, we can get this data from BIM or maybe the data from other than BIM, right? And of course, there's also, of course, some software company who supplies, who do the energy analysis came to us to, promote the software. And the good thing is that when we check the software to use, and when we go through all the process, I mean, of course, I will say, you will not find a software that can suit 100%. So some of them still you have to do your own, or maybe you have to do your own process to get the result. Okay, so because the time is not really, I cannot have a time to share a lot on this process, right? And so back to the topics, who we need to catch eye, right? So if you think the eye that you want to use for project facility management, the eye will come be late later, right? So because if you see the stage, you have to do information management, you have to do start from project definition, you have to do proper BIM modeling and all that. So you have to make sure that data that you want is accommodated in the model, and the project database also, we capture all the BIM model data plus, as I said, other data, because not all data will come from BIM. It's our own experience, right? So for me, it's the stage that we more focus is beginning, and I was quite sure because when I came, when my boss is my former professor said, no, you focus on this information management. I said, I thought as a BIM manager, I have to look at more on the model or more on the technology. Is it? No, because BIM coordinator and BIM model can do that. The most important is once you do the model, how you want to manage it. So we already talked about these things, and luckily when that's why we develop a lot of process model and at this stage, and it helped a lot when we because our modeling is not developed by us, we have a consultant to do it. We are only the BIM coordinator, so-called BIM coordinator for the clients, BIM consultant for the client. We check the model. So when we get the model, we check. Plus, not only the model, the information inside there, whether it's fulfill the client's needs. So how we check it, we use so for example, like this one, or maybe this process, right? So it helps us a lot to overcome some of the problems, because we don't want, when it comes to the last stage here and the eye part, the end of part, then we have a big problem there. Right? I think that's all. I do a quick one. So unless I open for the questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I like the idea of the step, catch me if you can, is this thing that people forget about the information management stage. Because maybe after we start involving on doing the models, so eager to see how the model look like, then most of the time we forgot the eye, the importance of eye. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wan Fadil. I know that you have a very vast experience on this BIM implementation from your experience working in outside the country. I think in Dubai, is it, Dr. Wan?
Abu Dhabi. I was in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, okay, sorry, in Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
So interesting, because you came back, and with a vast knowledge and vast experience on BIM, and then start to join our local markets, talking about or implementing about the BIM project. Okay, we are open for any questions. I think we can start to list down a few questions from the participants. Can you project one question, Dr. Sola? Okay, Tamizi, yeah, now we have there is a gap between academic and industry in BIM. I can see the academic sometimes is speaking about that something is very far comparing to the situation of the industry, and sometimes it's opposite, which is the industry or past the researcher's scopes and objectives. How can we reduce the gap, Doctor, between them?
Actually, this question is not about BIM alone. I think almost all the syllabus that we have in the university.
You take opportunity, but now you are on the commercialization unit.
When I take over the office of commercialization, rather than bringing me closer to the academic, actually bring me far away from the academic, because I need to focus on the money making rather than academic making.
This is the question that you have the answer now.
Okay. Regarding to the question, how we can reduce the gap between academic and industry. I may come out with a very controversial answer here, and most of the lecturers may not be happy with my answer. But sometimes you have to really face with the truth. My first question to the academician itself: how competent you are to train your students? If the lecturer itself are not competent enough, how can we expect the gap can be reduced? So, no, because I'm sitting in both worlds. I'm sitting as academician, I also sitting as industry, doing a real project, setting up the syllabus, setting up development. When we getting involved with I'm not talking all I don't generalize the entire academicians, but talk about certain academicians. So what they're focusing at, really looking at the research and development, in which doesn't focusing much on the industrial needs. So they finish their research, they finish their publication and everything and so forth. But rather than looking on the particular aspect, but rather they're producing a document, focusing on producing the document. That's my worry about. And then, is it the mistake come from the lecturer? No, it's not the mistake from the lecturer. The system has been tailored in such a way. If you want to get promoted, you need to publish certain numbers of papers. You need to secure certain numbers of grants. You need to secure certain numbers of consultancy. So because of the numbers game, I do believe they tend to go with the numbers rather than developing the experience. Because unlike in our situation in UMP, we are more towards technical university.
Yeah.
Our focus is all of the lecturer must have strong technical knowledge, so that we can, because the way we structure the syllabus is much more hands-on rather than theoretical based. So not only myself, but other lecturers as well. So in order to reduce the gap, certain lecturers need to enhance the knowledge, and that comes why most of the lecturers attach to the UMP holdings and do the actual commercial delivery. Because I do believe if the lecturer can develop their competency, they can reduce the
gap. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, it's tough answer.
Yes. But I have to give honest opinion on this. I rarely give this answer, to be honest.
Can I give you an opinion from industry?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
I've been here for quite a few years now. I think that the industry in Malaysia is not engaged well enough with the universities. So I don't think there's enough direction from industry back to the universities. My view on things is that there should be a lot more people like myself speaking at the universities, engaging with the universities, doing research with the universities. There seems to be a big gap between the educational facilities and the actual industry in terms of private industry, I think, and that's leading to some of these problems that we're seeing. So students coming out with skills are not relevant or appropriate, or even worse. I did a presentation in one university and I scared the students to near death because they realized that they hadn't seen any of these technologies or any of these systems or any of these processes. And they were very fearful that when they went looking for a job, they wouldn't be able to get a job because they didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So I think we have to find a way. It's not just about the universities upping their game. I think the industry has to get much more involved with actually giving them guidance and direction. Yeah. And I agree with Tarmizi. This is not a BIM problem. This is a generic problem across the sector.
Yes. Thank you, Ronan.
Okay.
The one you have opinion?
On the first question, yeah, because I have both experience. You know, I was in lecture at UTM before. Yeah, I feel the same problem. You know, because the most important now in the industry. I mean, most half of my time academic, half of my time now in the industry. I think that like BIM is, you know, not only BIM. I mean, for other areas also like involve more like technicals. I think I agree with Dr. Tamis. I mean, that's it. So if they don't have enough academics, I mean, experience. Sorry, industry experience. I mean, academics should have experience in industry. They can invite, you know, some the industry people who can support the program. And of course, the program should be in line with the industry needs. I mean, they should develop the people together with industry. I think that is most important because the industry know what they want, you know, because some industries are too theoretical. That's a problem, you know. So they have to make the gap less on that like that. Otherwise, there will be two separate, you know, two different directions in that always. There's my just my opinion. Yeah.
Definitely, Dr. Wan. I also have the same ideas, the same opinion, because I involved with the I think almost 5 years as an industry lecturer in University Malaya. I think their initiative is very good, you know, because they try to bring a practitioner to teach in the master program and then sharing with the bachelor degree programs, you know. So, but not many universities have that at the moment, but I believe they will open up a lot after this. You know? Okay, Sola, what about next question? You know? Second question. Mr. Ronan, over to you.
How is Malaysia ready for implementation of BIM in infrastructure projects and what are the challenges? Okay, so there is no definition of ready. So the definition is, are you willing to solve the problem and are you willing to work at the problem? And from my experience in Malaysia, 99.9% of people are willing to try and solve the problem given the resources to do it. So it's a case of making sure that we understand what we're trying to do, making sure that it adds value either to the project directly or to the owner in the long term, and then getting over the challenges. And the biggest challenge in industry is training and education. There is a complete lack. Like we have, 50 people on this call, maybe 60 people on this call. There are some very experienced people that are making presentations. In a sensible world, you would hope to see 300 people on this call rather than 50 or 60. So there's a challenge in our industry that there's a lack of willingness to go on training programs. There's a lack of willingness to pay to get access to these training programs. And until we address that issue, and I don't know how we do that, we're always going to have that challenge. So to me, it's about sharing information, it's about communication, and it's about training. They're the big issues. I have never yet met an engineer or an architect or a construction manager who wasn't up for solving a problem. Everybody in our industry is very good at solving problems. It's just whether they have all the right skills. How are Gamuda preparing information systems in the early stage of the design for the operation stage? So I think my slides kind of alluded to what we're doing. We didn't have all the answers at the beginning. We've worked very hard to set up the common data environment to capture information. We've worked very hard to train people to use the field view system. We've now got some 2,000 staff using that system to capture information. We're still working very hard to understand how to use the information. And as I say, we're getting into the mechanical electrical contracts in terms of installation and actually commissioning and everything else over the next couple of months and over the next 18 months. I think we're going to uncover more challenges, but there's no master plan sitting on the shelf that we had it all figured out before we started the project. It's just because it's been a team effort. There's a huge team in Gamuda, as you all know. And a lot of people have been working to solve a lot of these challenges in terms of sharing information, collecting information. So there is no, we're ready, let's go and do it. There's just a willingness to go and solve that problem.
Yeah, they always say like, it's not too late to start, but you must start.
Yeah. So just one thing before we move on to the next speaker, I'm going to put something in the chat that I found actually preparing for today's presentation. There's actually a very good manual that was produced in the US by a facility management business, and it talks about BIM for FM. It's actually a very good reference structure. So it's in the chat. So if anybody wants to do any further reading around this BIM for FM, that is a good starting point. So I just shared that in the chat. I just want to get that. I forgot to mention that in my presentation. So I just want to slot that in now in a kind of awkward position.
Thank you, Ronan. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's look for the third question to Dr. Wan.
Yeah.
What are the issues regarding the implementation of BIM to IPD in Malaysia construction? I think you are the right man to make the comparison because you were in these two countries.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the questions. I think let me explain. The IPD is not Ibu Pejabat Polis Diraja, not like that. It's an indicated project delivery. No, actually it's been introduced by American Institute of Architects, and this is new type of procurement system. And as far as I know, until now, even this one is not being implemented yet. No, it's very difficult because why? For IPD, you have to bring most of the state players at early stage. This is, where's the tender? I mean, it's like you at the early stage, it's like direct work. And I think direct work project are very sensitive in Malaysia now. Many issues already. Right? So even for us, we tried on the first project in Abu Dhabi, and we managed to, with the clients, negotiate. Client have a few identified contractors that worked with them before, and we choose one of them, and we bring at the early stage subcontractors, even also some suppliers. Luckily for FM, because client have their own FM department, so they don't have an issue. Also, and we've got different contractors. I cannot give the answer for that, right? Meaning that this is the idea is idealistic, but when it comes to realistic, it's not happen. Right? So that's why on our second and third projects, we go as a normal procurement system, like design build or something like that. Right? So I a couple of years ago, I raised a few because a few PhD students, they came to me asking about research for the. I said, what did you study about this one? See why we cannot implement, if we can implement it. Because their background is a QS. I think they know about procurement better than me. I'm a civil engineer. Right. So I think what I want to say is I think it's still issues or something that's difficult to be implemented. Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a journey for us to implement if you want to move this IP. It's a journey. There's a lot of
there's no legal issues, a lot of legal issues.
Yeah.
And if you Google, if you find a papers today, many papers are written by lawyers. Don't be surprised. Regarding about IPD.
Okay.
Because engineer cannot talk about legal issues.
So just on IPD, I think it's very important that people realize that IPD is a full collaboration form of contract.
Yeah.
And Malaysia is not ready for that. So most of the works in Malaysia are based around traditional procurement of design consultants on a fee bid basis, followed by a competitive, somewhat aggressive tendering procedure for contractors. And that leads to a behavior where there's a total lack of trust in the industry. There's a lack of trust with the clients, there's a lack of trust in the engineering fraternity, and there's a lack of trust in the contractors. And the problem with IPD, even if you try and set up an IPD project in Malaysia, everybody is starting from a position of no trust. And IPD is a trust-based, risk-sharing platform. So there's a huge cultural shift to be had. And again, it goes back to the clients. If IPD is going to be successful in Malaysia, it's the clients are going to have to change their behavior. And unfortunately, the clients don't trust our industry. They don't trust that architects and engineers can actually work collaboratively and not steal money hand over fist. So that's the issue. Is it's all around trust. So IPD is not. It's not about BIM. BIM has got nothing to do with IPD. BIM is an enabler for sure, but you will not make BIM make IPD work unless you change the culture of the industry. You will never make IPD work.
No, I would like to add a bit more about the IPD things in Malaysia. Okay, if you look at our design and bid contract, because if you take the design and bid contract, it can further evolve to become IPD. But the problem is what's happening right now in Malaysia. Even though design and bid will allow you to bring everybody in front, but what happened was in majority of the contract in Malaysia, they give the design and bid contract to the contractor under the umbrella of the contractor, the same typical design bid process.
Yeah.
Method process is still continuing.
Yeah.
So even though the opportunity is there, so we get involved with few of the projects. It's not really easy to. We don't really have a problem on the contractual issue, but rather the cultural issue, and then the standard practice of the what been practicing around 40, I think more than 50 years.
People have been educated and reared into an argumentative, highly risk, highly contractual industry. And it's very hard to change people who spent 25 years working in that industry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think like today we are submitting our consultancy proposals. You know? So out of sudden the other guy is submitting my proposal to another company.
That sounds dodgy.
So anyway, this is the situation, you know, we need to deal with. So. Okay, I think again, Dr. Tamizi, there's two questions for you. What is your method of data validation on the BIM models when you use BIM to scan? This is interesting. Scan to BIM, you know. And second, for the completed project, we know BIM, but have a as-built drawing instead of using laser scanning. What do you suggest to have BIM in fast way?
Okay, the first question is what's your method for data validation for BIM models once you use BIM to scan to building site? Actually, it's just a graphical measurement only, because when you do the scanning, you just put a comparison between Revit model versus the scan model, but on the graphical aspect. But the most critical part, you need to properly set your origin of the model. So if you miss setting the origin of the model, then you're gonna be having a haywire of the positioning of the graphical. But again, as I said just now, the scan data simply give you accurate information regarding to geometrical. But the true value is not on the scan data, but rather the information that you populate into the BIM model as well. So when it comes to the populating the information under the BIM, inside the BIM model, because we working with the public work department template for JCAP projects, so they already has a set of rules that they have some sort of like a QA/QC checking form. We just only tick the form, which one is compliant, which one is not in compliance. There are certain criteria. Normally they will look into accuracy, completeness, and comprehensiveness. That we call talking about under the category of model integrity. This kind of thing that they check. So that's for the second question. For the completed project with no BIM but have as-built drawings, instead of using laser scan, what do you suggest to have BIM in faster way? Now again, what are you looking at? Are you looking at converting as-built to become 3D BIM, in which you don't need to have the laser scan?
Yeah.
Or looking at the accuracy of the information that you want to have within your as-built BIM model? Because the reason I said you can't really convert from as-built, because most of the as-built are not accurate, are not complete, and are not comprehensive enough. So even if you try to, trust me, to convert from CAD to BIM, you can settle it within 1 month. But when you bring the model down, validate it at the site, you can see a lot of different variation. The positioning of the wall, the information there, and then the routing of mechanical system. Trust me, that one's going to be a lot of troubles. There are a lot of mismatch between what you model from the as-built and what you model from you look at the site. So the reason why we use the laser scan because we want to validate back, and then towards the end, we have to abandon the as-built. It's better to take from the laser scan, much more accurate from there. But taking from the laser scan is very, very tedious work. Unless people are willing to pay high enough to do the job, then we can do this. We can do it, but nobody willing to pay that.
So can I add in some experience to this so we can just get a different viewpoint? The question is not what is the method of validation. The question is why are you doing it?
Yes.
So if you've got a BIM, or if you've got any model, whatever Revit file, a Tekla model, whatever version of software you have, and then you've got the ability to do either laser scanning, and actually laser scanning is complete overkill. So in 2020, photogrammetry is a much better tool. So you can simply use any smartphone, take 15 to 20 photographs of a room and generate a 3D model nearly as accurately as a point scan cloud for a very, very light amount of information. But the question is, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
If you don't have a client who's going to maintain the model, then there's no point giving them an as-built 3D model because they're never going to keep it up to date. As soon as they change something, the model is completely useless. So whether that's changing a piece of equipment, whether that's changing the location of a door, whether that's changing a ceiling, as soon as someone starts making changes to the building, if they're not updating the model is completely useless because it's only a matter of time before it becomes completely irrelevant. And what you end up with is you end up with the actual building, the as-built drawings, which we know are not correct, and then a so-called as-built model, which is different again, which ends up being not different, which ends up being not maintained. So the first question is why? Why are you creating an as-built 3D model? That's the first question you got to ask. And then in the second one, if you've only got two-dimensional drawings, then I would not build a model from CAD into 3D BIM because it's just going to be wrong because the reference drawings are going to be wrong. The only way to build a three-dimensional model of an existing facility is to start with laser scanning and photogrammetry, identify what needs to be modeled that's of relevance to whatever the job's going to be, and then go from there. But most times when someone comes to a design firm or a construction firm or any asset firm, their plan is not to keep the asset, their plan is to change it. So if they're going to change it, that involves demolition, that involves taking stuff down. There's no point spending hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours at a workstation building a computer model of something that's going to get demolished in 15 minutes on a construction site. So everybody's got to start from why. Why are we building the models? Why are we using it? Why are we using the data? How are we doing it? Don't worry about the what. The what's easy. The question is why.
Yeah, the why. You know?
Agree with that.
Why you want, you know. The important thing is the reason why you want it. You know?
Why am I here?
Yeah, why am I here? Okay.
We got a question. We got a question from a gentleman who I dare not pronounce his name. I think it's Olu Dulapo.
Yeah.
And he's asking if I can shed more light on the database design. I can give him a job, but he can sign a non-disclosure, and then I can tell him what the database design is. But it's not a complicated database. So all we're doing is basically setting up tables on an asset-by-asset basis. So for every individual asset, we're setting up a data table, and that asset is then linked through its asset identification identifier. So if we're using a form to collect a progress review on an asset, we start off with the asset ID tag and we collect the data for that asset based on that tag. If we're collecting suppliers information, whether it's warranties and whatever information about the asset, we use the same thing. So essentially the databases are relatively straightforward, but the key ingredient is having a unique identifier that links all the data sets together. That's what's critical. So the sooner you can create equipment identification tags that are signed off by the owner, that's what they're going to use to maintain the asset, then you can start building out your data tables. But we're not doing anything that's rocket science. It's all relatively straightforward, quite simple stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
This question number 4 to you, Ronan.
Oh, okay. Drones and facility management. Okay, so we are making a very good use of drones for two primary purposes. One is photogrammetry. So we're actually using it as a survey tool. So we can survey construction sites, we can survey linear assets, we can survey existing conditions. So we can use the drones to basically take tens of thousands of photographs if we need to, and we generate 3D photogrammic models from those photographs. We also use them for progress monitoring. So we use them for maintaining a weekly or monthly record of a construction project in terms of progress. But in the same way that Tarmizi has explained with laser scanning, there is no data in a photograph. So if I fly a drone around a building and get all the photographs I need, and I get a very good detail of the building, that doesn't actually give me any data for facility management. Now, there are platforms that you can use to do artificial intelligence assessment of the photographs. So for example, there's a company in Singapore that's flying surveys of curtain wall facades. So instead of getting an access scaffolding and climbing up and down the building, you can use the drones, take tens of thousands of photographs, and then run those photographs through an AI platform, and it will identify cracks, it'll identify weathering, it'll identify sealants that are missing, and it'll flag them all up. And then someone's got to go back and check all the photographs. But there's really no BIM data that goes directly into what I would consider to be a facility management tool, like a Maximo or something like that. There's no direct link at the moment. And then how can BIM data be useful for the optimization of schedules for MRT? It can't. So there's nothing in the BIM system that relates to the movement of trains and the movement of people, or more importantly, all of the stuff that's going on around the linear assets. So if you've got bus timetables, if you've got other train schedules like the LRT schedule, the monorail schedule, the data that's in BIM is not looking at the operational side. It's looking at the actual physical asset side. So if you want to look at the optimization of schedules, you have to go and look at a completely different set of data. You got to look at all of the other data outside the metro. So there's nothing in the design construction data that's useful for the optimization of the schedules for the trains.
Okay, regarding to the facility management, I may want to add a bit about the drone usage. So in our practice in our holdings, we have regular inspection of the visual inspection of the structure component, like water tank, higher level, all these kind of things. So rather than sending people to climb up, we just use the drone in order to do the inspection.
Yeah.
Inspection, visual inspection. If we detect something wrong, only then we can going to send our people climbing the structure. Just for that purpose only, for O&M, but not to capture the data itself.
Yeah. It's a very, very powerful and very safe method of doing inspections for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have helping one of the telcos company to come up with a specification to utilizing drone to do the tower inspection to reduce their cost of the climbing, working at height,
Yeah.
By using drones, they can do the inspection very fast with minimum risk, then they can save their money to pay the right person to do the right replacement instead of paying the expensive person to just doing the inspection without doing the maintenance work.
So just one thing about that. So one of the challenges in Malaysia comes around licensing and operational permits for these drones. So to do that surveying work, at the moment, a lot of people are turning a blind eye to the requirements of actually having the right permits from the different agencies. I suspect that will change, and my hope is that the agencies will figure out a more lenient way of dealing with drones for licensing and follow a more user license rather than an actual permit to fly license.
Yeah.
But anybody who's looking at doing drone surveys, either for asset inspection or for the kind of work you're talking about in terms of a telco, be very wary and very careful of the requirements in terms of having the right licenses to fly, because if something goes wrong, your insurance is immediately null and void. And these drones go wrong, especially if you're flying in and around steel structures and everything else. If one of these drones goes AWOL, it's not going to land where you want it to land. And if it falls out of the sky, it could cause an accident. So be very careful.
Yeah, definitely. So because we work together with key and health departments to come up with that. I think 5 before the government put up the requirement for license for the operator. Okay.
There's one question from Rafi on the chat. I don't know. Do you want to somebody want to pick that up?
So I think Dr. Wan, how about you? Because you is construction heavily. Because
Sorry?
Yeah, this is the question. We are seeing a building construction material supplier embarking on BIM story in the local markets. in general, what is important for the industry if they are getting support services from the supplier to deliver their LOD 500 aspect model? Most of all, will you allow the material supplier to work together on your project?
I try to get to understand the question.
Basically,
I know where Rafi's coming from. Do you want me to give you a short answer and then Chewan, you can give a long answer?
No, yes.
So Rafi works for Hilti. So Hilti have got a very sophisticated BIM system that they're using for example, for fire stop. So they have a platform where they can actually help the mechanical contractors actually work out all the fire stop requirements and all the openings requirements. So the question is a loaded question because obviously Hilti have got a very, very good system, but it is important and it is very welcome. So if the short answer is, would we allow material suppliers to work on your project? The short answer is yes, we would welcome it a lot. The challenge is that they're adding in a value that's not typically priced into contracts. So if we put them up against a local supplier who's not doing BIM, 99 times out of 100, the contractor will pick the other guys if it's a price battle. But if it's a choice of having a better thought out detailed design and a better specification for fire stop and everything else, then yes, we would love to have people that have got the capabilities. But that's where Rafi's coming from. Is this more technically competent subcontractors and supply chain going to be more valuable? And they are in a sophisticated market, but a lot of the time in Malaysia we don't see that sophistication. We just see they want value for money and they don't want technical value.
Actually, if all the supplier can provide the digital model together with the information loaded into their 3D model, the 3D components, it solves a lot of trouble in populating information into the BIM model.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, but the problem is that if there's only one of those in the market and there's 3 other companies that don't, and those other guys are cheaper, then the technical guy doesn't win.
Yeah. Yes, this is the problem because towards the end, it always goes back to the client. Just client willing to pay information that they want to have.
Yeah.
They will ask so many ridiculous things, but towards the end, they still stick to the same payment structure, previous payment structure, rather than introducing new initiative or to get the data, everything. So as long as the client willing to pay, I think you can do a lot of wonders.
Okay, I think we almost
yes, maybe we go for one question of that. We have 3 questions more, but maybe we can go for one question.
Yeah, please, Sola.
Yep. I think maybe we go for the first question. What's the key data information in BIM that should be and help FM stakeholders to make a decision and managing the life cycle for asset life cycle management?
I think that one should be taken by Sha'rainon.
Yeah, maybe.
What is the key data information? Okay, I take this question. What is the key data information on BIM so that those data can help FM stakeholder make decision in managing?
That's the wrong question.
Yeah.
And how do we ensure information integrity in BIM process, particularly on accuracy, consistency, and reliability? Too many exhibit drawings, missing information and error. What are the strategy in the BIM process to improve the exhibit drawing? Okay. What are the key data information in BIM so that those data can help FM stakeholder make a decision and managing this ALCM? This is very very interesting, and the answer is that the key information of BIM so they can help FM is about there's a 2. One is the space information. Second is the asset information. But how deep is the information is based on how they want to use that information for their operation. The problem is that sometimes the FM cannot give this information to the BIM people, what type of data they require, So it makes the BIM people unable to produce the data that to be used by the FM, So this is always like when you complete the project, so then they say, no, I cannot use this BIM model because it doesn't fit my purpose. You know? So these are always the issue. You know, the key is first is the space information and the asset. Of course, the asset based on, if we're looking on the JKR, is always on the SCADA, and I always go for the four component structure, like system, subsystem, components, subcomponents. But how deep you want to go, it depends on what type of the buildings that they construct and how the contract they want to maintain or they manage, you know, and what type of contract that they have, you know. If they just a conventional contract, construct and deliver, and they don't have the FM, so if we create the FM model for this type of projects, later on we doesn't know what is the purpose, it'll be like it's like a waste, you know, because you don't have the end story, you know, the end of the games, you know. So these are the key data that I always mention to my clients. And for the if I want to go for the ALCMs, asset lifecycle costing or asset lifecycle management, you know, and it's always have a very rich data, you know. But what are the priority data that they always want to use? You know, we set the priority or when you want to do ALCM. And sometimes they want to manage everything, even the asset that very small, so they want to have it, you know. But sometimes it's not necessary. And how do we ensure information integrity in BIM process, particularly on accuracy, consistency, and reliability? Okay. And this is the integrity data, you know. So on the BIM process, people don't understand about the real BIM process, you know. So if you look again in the contract, you know, they already mentioned all this information, even though we didn't do it in BIM. You know, the accuracy, consistency, and reliability is already been spelled out, even though the contract is not for BIM. So to ensure it, normally we have a quality departments, QA, QC, you know. So because these are the simple people that can manage this accuracy, consistency, and reliability. But we don't use this QA, QC department to manage this information, you know. Except that this QA, QC department is always been used. It's only been they only want to use it to manage the documentation, you know. But they forget that inside the documentation there are a lot of information, you know. They don't bother about to manage this accuracy, consistency, in reliability of the information inside the document. For them, when the document approved, that's it, you know, they can put somewhere. Too many SBIT drawing exhibit missing information and errors. What are the strategies in the BIM process to improve SBIT drawing and model? Okay, I like this idea because when we have a contract, you know, we have a multi-million contract. You know. When we talk about SBIT drawing, how much is the price that we put for the SBIT drawing? So when they said the SBIT drawing is only 50,000 ringgit, whereby the construction is maybe 50 million ringgit, then you know where is the actually SBIT drawing value to the contracts, you know. So if the contractor don't want to use the SBIT drawing, so they only
omit
25,000 ringgit, you know. So contract is like 10 million, you know. So this is the strategy that is already like they don't put the value on the SBIT. This we cannot get good SBIT, you know. Whether we change the strategy instead of think about the big sum of money, you know, it's simple. Money talks, you know. Sum of money to SBIT. If the SBIT is not accurate enough, you know, so then they get penalty a ton of money, then they will go and the SBIT is correct. I think that's my free answer. You know?
So to add up regarding to your third question, okay, because most of our nature of contract is by tender.
Yeah.
One contractor may put 50,000 ringgit for the SBIT production. Another one may put 200,000 ringgit because you want to use the high quality SBIT BIM or SBIT drawings. Because then which one is gonna win the tender?
Definitely the lowest one.
Yes. So this is the true dilemma. Then somebody want to do the right thing, producing the high quality as-built. That's one thing. So if as far as the process is concerned, it would be good if, because I always believe, build it digitally before building it physically.
Yeah.
So we have to build it digitally. That means during the request for inspection at site, you have to request for inspection of your model first to ensure the data is there already before the physical sequence can be done. But in order to impose that request for inspection together with the BIM model progress approval, definitely going to incur a new process, new cost, and a lot of things. Then towards the end, who willing to pay that? Except the client.
Yeah. That's why we changed the value. We put the different value for this as-built. So we really change the mindset of the people that expecting that as-built is very, very expensive. If we don't deliver. It's not a penalty. It's not the value of the as-built figure, but the impact of them not delivering the as-built.
Yes.
So, how about Ronan? I have any last?
I think I just go back to the message. This is my slides. If the client does not know what information they want to run their asset, and the client doesn't see that information being valuable, then any information that gets handed over at the end of the job is worth 50,000 ringgit.
Yes.
It all comes in when it comes to asset management, asset information management. If you don't have a client who understands how to run their asset, whether it's a record drawing or an Excel spreadsheet with all the assets in it, whether it's a folder full of record information and manuals, or whether it's a full-blown digital asset information management platform, if they don't know how they're going to run their facility, then give them the 50,000 ringgit solution, because there's no point even giving them a 500,000 ringgit solution, because they're never going to use it. So this all goes back to educating the clients.
Yeah, right. Okay, it looks like we covering everything. Dr. Wan, if there anything else you would like to cover before we wrap up?
Give a group presentation. Just to be on the process on as-built, what we did before, as I said, and I was mentioning about this. Our company is a big consultant work for clients. I mean, so the design model, the information is being developed by another consultant. So all the information the model, when they give to us, we check not only the models as I mentioned, we will check also the data that they provide inside. So that's why every phases we ensure that all the information that we defined earlier is fulfilled. Or being accommodated in the model, except other than BIM model. So this is what we make sure of %, as I say, but there's one way that we control the BIM process in order to get the information that we want at the end of the project. I don't have my time not up to the as-built drawing, so I cannot give that share the speed on that part. I just up to the construction side. So LOD 400 only 400. I'm very sorry, I cannot tell what happened after that because I back to Malaysia that time. Okay. But the process, as I said, is good if you control. You have something to control, like process model or something that you can check the model, not only the model, the nice model, the data, the information that you provide. That's what I might want to say. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wan. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you to all speakers. Thank you for speaking with us in our webinar. We are grateful for this time and effort you took to share your thought and experience with us. Since we are entering new digitalization era phase everywhere, your discussion were very timely. I believe we all can benefit immediately from the knowledge that you have shared. And we always welcome you to our next discussion. Thank you again for your contribution. To all participants, we would greatly appreciate if you can give us some feedback regarding our webinar. You can fill in the survey through the link I just posted in the Zoom chat box. And host, please take our few moments to complete the survey below to help us to come up with a new, better webinar session. And thank you for everyone also. We really appreciate you being here. Don't forget to join our next webinar next Wednesday 19 August, 8:30 to 10. We are going to discuss on the same topic with different panel. The next session, the title is the I in BIM, cash I if you can. Cash I if you can, cash I if you can. We have a confirmed panel. First from Dr. Muhammad Faris Hamidi, Associate Professor in Qatar University. And we have Gavin Kram, founder and BIM consultant of BIM Guru. And we have Mr. Ahmad Sha'rainon, Managing Director of 3Tech Parametrics, Sdn Bhd. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you, Dr. Wan. And thank you, Dr. Tamizi. And thank you, everybody, for sharing with us. We hope to see you next week. And thank you again for joining us today. And Assalamualaikum and very good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
See you next week.
Okay, sure.